Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. So in this video I want to show you the best explanation for the bull case for Neutron and one of the best explanations of what's happening in the space industry, why there's going to be demand for Neutron and other medium launch vehicles despite the Falcon Starship being successful. Really good video, highly recommended. The full link is going to be in the description box below. So let's get going. Here is a guy that I think not many of you have heard of. His name is Andy Lapsa, and he used to be a engine engineer at Blue Origin. Here you can see he actually got like some award from Blue Origin. He doesn't work there anymore. He went rogue, theoretically, and founded his own space company. And it's a very interesting space startup. I was actually surprised because normally I'm very skeptical about new rocket startups, because we have discovered Peter Beck says in many interviews that the rocket technology hasn't changed since the 50s or 60s, but they really have a different approach. So I'm just going to play a short video that explains what they do and how they do it, and then I'm going to show you the fantastic parts from the interview that I think every Rocket Lab investor needs to see. So here we go.
We are Stoke Space. Our second stage is unlike any other. It goes to space, through space, and back from space, all with a single reusable vehicle, setting the standard for dynamic space operations. With our high performance, 100% reusable second stage, you gain direct access to any orbit. Our ability to refuel in space empowers us to move without restrictions among LEO, GEO, and beyond. Our actively cooled metallic heat shield has unrivaled durability, unlocking missions to any planetary surface, on Earth or otherwise. With on-demand mobility, our vehicle can acquire, protect, and move your asset. Our ability to tailor the cooling power for each mission enables us to return assets back home from any location to any location, seamlessly connecting Earth and space. We are more than a launch company. We are ushering in a new era of dynamic space operations. We are Stoke Space.
Guys, a question. So how much money do you think in space or launch startups budget has to go into making these videos? Because these videos, I mean, all of them, it's freaking awesome. I think it's like, I don't know, must be a huge part of their budget. So let's keep it short. I want to respect your time. So we go to the interview. So they have a very special second stage, really interesting engineering thoughts behind it. You can watch the video and actually understand. The main difference here is that they do a lot of Musk type innovation where they're deleting parts, and the fuel has to be cryogenically cooled, and their big idea is that they can use the bottom part of the rocket to store the cryogenically cooled fuel. And if they make the rocket from stainless steel, then basically the rocket comes down and it's at a temperature where it can be used again. Whereas if you use tiles, the tiles can crack and you need to, inspect them and you need to maintain them. And they go through a lot of things in this interview, and it's really, the logic behind it really checks out. So now I just want to show you this part. This more pertains to the space industry and what is happening. And basically this CEO, he thinks and wants the SpaceX Starship to be successful, and he thinks that it's going to open up space like it has never been opened before, and probably they're going to take millions and millions of tons of stuff up to space. He thinks there's probably going to be multiple space stations. Maybe the real start of space tourism is going to start, because there's going to be so many, stations to go to. And you will see why you needed this data. But let's begin this interview.
I think here's at the end of the day what you want, what we all want, what customers want. You want.
Oh, I'm sorry. Just want to make sure it's human speed. There we go.
A couple things out of space mobility. The first thing is you want it to be low cost. The second thing is you want it to be much more on demand than what we have today, right? I mean, if you want to buy a standalone Falcon 9, it's like a 2-year lead time, which is great, right? There's lots of demand, but it's a long lead time. And if you think about if you're a startup and you're trying to figure out how you're going to get to space, like, do you want to use your very early seed dollars to reserve a spot in line for launch? No, you want to use it to prove your technology. So there's a balance there. But so you want low cost, you want on demand, and you want high reliability. And I think actually the beauty of full rapid reuse is it attacks all three of those three things at the fundamental level. So you get into this kind of virtuous cycle. The lower cost you have, the more demand you have, the more frequently you're flying. The more frequently you're flying, the better your reliability and the better your availability. And it just feeds on itself. And that's beautiful. That's what you want, right? We're starting to see that is what Falcon has started to show us as an industry. But it is, I would comment that it is still like very, very much day one in our industry. And what rapid full reusability is a whole nother order of magnitude in cost. And the same is true for availability, and then reliability follows as well.
So they touched on the first point here, and that is, in the space economy, it's not just like how cheap your launch is, it's also like how available is your launch. Because if you're a satellite provider company or a space startup, if you realize if you have to wait 2 years to get your stuff to orbit, that means that you have to have your not cheap staff, hundreds of people, because you want to retain talent. You have to employ them, wait 2 years where nothing is happening, and then maybe the launch even fails. And his point is that it doesn't make sense. Like, it doesn't go around to wait that long to get stuff in space. So this is the first bull case.
Makes sense. There's a question that I've seen float through chat in a couple different formats here. But you mentioned the cadence, right? Like, the more payloads you have to send, the higher your cadence is, the more experience you get, the better you get, because you have an excuse to be flying. And it's great if those are paid for, right? You don't just fly to fly. If you have a paying customer or a service that you're providing by flying these payloads, it's good for you because you get the experience. And we see that with SpaceX and Starlink. There are so many launches that happened, and we're over here broadcasting launches, and we're like, oh, it's another Starlink at 3 a.m. Great. But because of that product that SpaceX has made, they've sort of created their own demand to launch their vehicles, and then they improve their vehicles, they improve their cadence, they get the experience. That is a brilliant way to do it, right? How is Stoke sort of approaching that? Do you have anything in the plans where we're going to launch this many vehicles this many times to help us get this experience? Like, you need payloads, you need excuses and funding to launch vehicles.
I think that the right way to answer that, I think, is it also feeds into the size of the vehicle. You want to have customers. You want to have enough customers who want to go to the same place at the same time always. And if you build a vehicle that's too big, then you can't fill the metaphorical seats of the vehicle, right? So if you think about, a great analogy is the airline industry, right? You have everything from Cessnas to A380s. And in the middle, there's a sweet spot where there's enough people to fill the seats who want to go to the same place at the same time, all the time. And those things are flying all the time. Those are the 737s and the A320s, right? A380 is already out of production because it's so big. It's the cost structure it's too expensive, and they can't fill the seats. So you can't fly enough, right? And so I guess that's
Go ahead.
So he brought up such a freaking good point. And again, this is really the best explanation that I have seen on this, is that, you know, your vehicle is designed for a certain payload. So obviously the Starship is going to be crazy cheap to deliver hundreds of tons to low Earth orbit. And let's say it's going to cost 100 million per launch in the beginning, and maybe it will come down to, you know, 60, 70 million. But if you need a small satellite to go up and it will cost 30 million with these guys, even though you're paying technically a higher kilogram price to space, you're still paying less money. This is what so many people don't understand. So fantastic explanation here.
That's what led us to this medium class of rocket, where I think there's enough other commercial customers who are going to want to, we'll be able to fill our seats on every flight. And really, we're actually the limiter, not the demand side. We'll fly as frequently as we possibly can, and there will always be demand, right? That's what you want. You want to be always pushing yourself to fly more frequently.
Gotcha. Because we're almost, I don't know, chicken, egg, cart, horse, demand before the supply, right? We're not in a situation right now where we have 15 commercial space stations and 20 orbital factories that are making crystals that are better to make in microgravity or low gravity, whatever you want to call it, right? We don't have that yet. And
no, but we do have probably 100 different satellite companies building small and medium sized satellites, and they're all trying to get to orbit. And I think what a lot of those companies are finding are that their rideshare missions with Falcon 9 are great for proof of concept demo missions. But once you have to actually deploy a constellation where satellites need to be phased out in a way that works for you, you know, those rideshare missions are no longer ideal, right? So now what do? You're not going to buy a whole Falcon 9 for these small things. You need something else, right?
Let's make sure everybody understands that real quick, because I think a lot of people miss this. It's like, oh, I'm going to space, and I'm in space. I'm good, right? Well, you don't just want to get into space. That's like saying, I want to go to the U.S. I want to go to Germany, right? Okay, well, you're in Germany. Did you get to the right city where the tourist attraction you want to see is? No, you need to go to a specific place in Germany. You need to go to a specific place in the city. And so the rideshare is the plane that gets you to the proper country, right? But there's a lot of other places that you need to go. If you have something and you stack a bunch of stuff into a rideshare and you launch a bunch of them into the one orbit that you sort of end up in and get dropped off at, then the satellites have to make their way to their own orbits, right? And so then your satellite has to have more capability. You just use the term phasing. They have to be able to move into the useful spot that you need them. And the useful spot isn't always the spot that the rideshare drops them off, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So when you have a smaller launcher, a medium launcher, then you can get put to the right building in the city, right? You get the exact destination that you're trying to go to, as opposed to, well, I got on the train and I ended up downtown and now I have to make my way to wherever it is that I'm going. That's where you get into the more specific orbit, not just riding along with everybody else.
Everybody would rather fly direct than have layovers. Right. And there's a very real time value of money associated with this. If a lot of these orbit phasings take 6 months, 9 months to get from drop off location to final location. You even see that in Starlinks, right? And for a company, if you look at it on economic terms, for a company, that's time. It's like dead inventory, right? Where you are not in manufacturing and you are not making revenue, right? So there's a time value of money associated with that one. You'd rather do what satellite companies want, and what our goal is to minimize that time from the time the satellite leaves the factory, the time that they're making revenue. And that's where more frequent direct missions closer to the final orbit come in. And I think that's the role of a medium class rocket, provided that it can operate quickly, right?
Right. So that's the role of the medium class rocket, also known as Neutron. So this was seriously one of the very best explanations that I've heard about how the space industry is and what is the things that are going on. One observation is Peter Beck is so certain about demand, and this guy also seems so certain about demand. And he says that there's hundreds of new satellite companies that are, trying to get into orbit, and they really explain why Falcon Heavy, the Falcon ride sharing, and the Starship is not a viable option for them. And I buy it. I'm convinced. And I became much more bullish on Rocket Lab after watching this video. I know that this guy's intention is to get you bullish on Stoke Space, and I'm gonna hold an eye out on them. They seem very, very interesting. Obviously, they are just way more behind than Rocket Lab. Like Rocket Lab is, I don't need to introduce you to that company. So these guys still have to really come over a lot of barriers. They have very little funding, but this guy also seems to be very, very smart with the money. So I think that they have a shot at being successful, but they still need to climb the Mount Everest. Rocket Lab has climbed Mount Everest and then they're on the way back. So let me know in the comments what you thought about this video. Please make sure that you're subscribed. And if you watched this far, I want to let you know that I have a Patreon link in the description box below where you can support the channel. And I'm going to upload very good content in the future. But if you join now, it's purely to support the channel. And the content that is going to be up there is I'm going to, as you see on the channel, analyze companies. I'm going to upload all my Excel tables, the different theses that I have about different companies, and you will be able to download these and, you know, make your own assumptions. And of course, you can also request things for me to do on Patreon. So in any case, I really appreciate if you check that out. Thank you so much for spending this time with me, and I'll see you in the next video. Ciao, ciao.